Not everyone can hear me. Hello, hi. Hi, welcome to the 2023 Sundance Film Festival. My name is Sudeep Sharma. I'm a programmer here at the festival. I just want to thank you all for being here. It's just very exciting to be able to gather together again and to share space and to hear conversations like this that impact us all. And it's just very exciting, and we're just really happy to be back. So thank you. I'm introducing Complicating Representation, which is a panel that we're really excited about. And we're the thinking behind this panel is that with increased visibility for historically underrepresented people is empowering, but also can bring new challenges and complex questions. This panel is a chance for successful creators impacted by current and sometimes false or performative interests in diversity in Hollywood to discuss the struggles, boons, doubts, and responsibilities of balancing more grassroots, edgy artistic practices. Unfortunately, we have a moderator. Our moderator is Bird Runningwater, but he came down with something. So stepping up in an amazing capacity is the director of the Indigenous program and a shorts programmer here at the festival, Adam Perron, who's going to be running our panel. You can come on up, Adam.
Thanks so much, Sudeep. Thanks, everyone. Double mic. Oh, you have one. All right, okay, cool. Here you go, Glenn. As Sudeep had mentioned, my name is Adam Perron. I am the director of the Indigenous program here at Sundance Institute. I'm also a film programmer with the festival. Like I said, I'm very happy to step in for Bird. I think this is a great conversation. A lot of how I hope it goes is, it's been very sort of close to my own heart over the last few years, especially when it has come to different things with programming films and working with filmmakers from underrepresented communities. But with that, I would like to introduce our first guest here on the stage, Marlee Matlin. Next on the stage, I would like to bring up Zachary Drucker. Randall Park. And Alethea Arnacook Burrow. Well, first off, I would like to ask each of you, in terms of with you being here at the festival, what is your film? What is it about? And I know some people are here with films this year, some people were here with films last year, but Alethea, how about we start with you first?
Sure. Hello. The film I'm here with, I'm one of the team of producers on a documentary called Twice Colonized, and it centers around a woman named Ayu Peter, who was born in Greenland but ended up in the Canadian Arctic and has therefore dealt with the colonization at the hands of the Danes who colonized Greenland, as well as the British and the French that colonized Canada, where we live as Canadian Inuit.
Thank you.
I'm here for the first time at Sundance in Park City, and this is very exciting. And as a director, I always told myself, maybe I'll be here as an actor one day, and I'm here as a director, which is crazy. But the movie is Shortcomings, based on a graphic novel by Adrian Tomina, and it's about 3 Bay Area urbanites, just flawed characters, just trying their best to be better people, and it's kind of vague, but that's what it's about.
Hey everyone, what an honor to share the stage with all of you and to be in community like this. This is my first time to Sundance as a director. I've been here as talent before, and I co-directed a film called The Stroll with Kristen Lovell, who's up here. And it is the story of the transgender sex workers who worked the meatpacking district and survived the streets of New York in the 80s, 90s, and aughts. It's an oral history, and it's a story about the rapid gentrification that happened in New York following 9/11 and the incarceration of trans sex workers from the streets of New York.
Hi, I'm Marlene Matlin. Nice to be here with all of you and all of you here on the stage. I was asked to come, and that's why I'm here. I showed up. No, actually, I had a movie here 2 years ago called Coda. And I'm very proud of the film, and it really made an impact. Sundance really started the ball rolling about the film, and then it just spread like wildfire. And eventually ended up winning 3 Academy Awards. I didn't get one, but that being said, I'm here as a Sundance juror to watch 12 films for the U.S. dramatic competition.
Awesome. I think like one of the things that, just sort of starting out, obviously, like given sort of the thematic focus of this talk in particular, I know, all of us come from, very diverse communities, and I think part of that has played also how all of the films or the stories that you are involved with here at Sundance, they all sort of have a part of how that played into how those films got made. I think, and also too, in terms of your own journey as a filmmaker or artist, I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that, like sort of like, how that worked. And yeah, anyone who wants to jump in first can.
I'm never shy to jump in. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and something I didn't know when I started in this industry is that the very first ever feature-length documentary was called Nanook of the North, and it was about my people. And at the time, the filmmaker Robert Flaherty asked the Inuit in the film to show the tools, the hunting tools, the clothing that they used to use a century before. So they weren't allowed to use their rifles or anything like that. So from the very first moment my people were on film, we were portrayed as a long ago culture that's no longer in existence. And that's something we've been fighting against from literally day one of the genre. And there's a moment in the film that we're here with Twice Colonized that makes me so proud when the subject, Ayu, tells a good friend of hers to fuck off. Because he says to her, she's holding a Starbucks cup, and he says, "You look very Western to me holding the Starbucks cup." And she says, "It's because people are always trying to imagine us 500 years ago." She said it much more eloquently than I am. But that's the main thing that we've been fighting against, I think, many Indigenous peoples, but certainly Inuit from a long time ago. So part of my goal is to make work that is modern, shows who we are today, that we actually live in the same time and dimension as the rest of the world.
Yeah, similarly for Shortcomings, I read the graphic novel when it came out back in 2007, and I was just so mesmerized by it and almost in awe by it, because it was a simple story about these Asian Americans in the Bay Area that were around my age at the time, and they were just kind of hanging out, in diners and walking in the streets of the city and talking, and it felt like very authentic to me, but it didn't have any of those markers of authenticity that that are often in a lot of cinematic or just portrayals of Asian Americans in general, where there's usually intergenerational conflict, or there's some trek back to the motherland, or a lot of delicious food, which, and all of that stuff is really great and I think important to show. But this story was just people hanging out in coffee shops, and I just thought, wow, I'd love to see this as a movie, you know. And I think at that time there were numerous attempts to do something with it, but the industry wasn't there yet. And eventually, somehow, you know, we got to make the movie, and the real exciting thing, you're talking about like modern Asian Americans, modern, you know, modern people. To me, that's what's most exciting about the movie. It's just how kind of simple it is.
So I came out as trans in my 20s in the George W. Bush era. And at the time, you know, I saw a clip from Trans America recently with Felicity Huffman, and it was a trip because I was realizing that I was a fledgling trans person back then, watching this representation that was so, at the time, we thought it was very empathetic towards the trans experience, and to watch it today, it's very jarring. I was around for what we call the trans tipping point in 2014. I worked as a producer for 6 years on Transparent and helped kind of shepherd that moment of trans folks becoming visible. And in that nascent stage, because the trope of trans sex workers was so overdone in narrative film and television, it was all that people knew of us, there was a direct and intentional effort to create more diverse, more robust renderings of trans life. And with the respectability politics that always come in that early stage, trans sex workers were really taken out of the conversation. Now, anybody who's been in trans life since that era has a relationship to sex work. It's the thing that all of us know, all of us femmes, and so many trans actors in Hollywood even have relationships to sex work that they don't talk about. Because there's such a pejorative lens on sex work and the trans piece, and it's an intersection. So we're at a point with representation where we are embracing complexity. We are allowing a more dimensional approach to understanding marginalized people. We don't have to pander to respectability in the same way. And it's such an incredible moment to witness this Sundance when there's not one, but two feature documentaries featuring trans sex workers finally taking the stage and resurrecting a history. And trans people have been sex workers since trans people existed in industrialized places. It has been our survival mechanism. Centuries ago, you see that in media, in newspapers, because trans people were not able to navigate the world and to get jobs. They had to survive on underground economies. Yeah. That's it for now.
Wow. I am inspired by each and every one of your comments. Truly, I have so many questions, and I have so much to say, and I have so much to identify with at the same time. I get it. I get a lot of where everyone on this panel is coming from. Different stories, but similar sentiments of oppression, of lack of of acknowledgement, of respect, a lack of encouraging, of allowing people to even be as employed. I mean, the major population, the people who have the power to make decisions, to hire, who say yes or no, whatever it may be. But I love Amy, by the way, from your show. I'm very good friends with her. Anyway, back to my point. I obviously am a deaf person because I'm signing, and people assume that as a deaf person, that means that I'm disabled and that I have a limitation. I live a limited life, and that's wrong. I live just like everybody else, except the fact that I have a culture that includes my language and a history, deaf history, that goes back many, many decades. I remember as a young girl, I was born deaf at 18 months. Oh, I became deaf at 18 months, and my parents were stunned. They didn't know what to do. They had never even seen a deaf child before. They didn't know what school to take me to, how to raise me, how it would be that they would even communicate with me, or what my future would be about, or where I would work, what I would become. And we're talking about 1965. So it was a long journey to the point where I am at today, talking about accessibility for my community. As a deaf person, if we're talking about captioning, we're talking about employment, we're talking about communication, we're talking about language access, we're talking about education, all of that is certainly important to consider. And over the years, I've seen the change. I have been very, as I said it, damn patient about what's been happening out there, meaning the fact that captioning fully occurring on television, I made it a point of making an appearance in front of the Senate to say, look, we have to have the devices in order for captioning to take place on television, and right there on the spot, they approved it. Okay, fine. And then we had to move to the point where I had to say, well, look, there are things that are happening, and yet I keep thinking to myself, I was probably one of the most visible deaf people, as you can see or as you've seen in my work, and it was a very lonely job because I couldn't do it all myself. I couldn't be an advocate for everybody. I couldn't say that this is what we need to do to improve, to grow, to collaborate. I couldn't do it for myself. But finally, with CODA, which made such a big impact on the industry, and people were suddenly taken aback and saying, oh my gosh. The movie, of course, itself is a deaf story. However, there also is music. We're talking about family relationships. We're talking about a coming-of-age story of a teenager. And it's something that everybody can identify with, in addition to the fact that there were captions burned into the film that everybody could watch, where I could sit in an audience and watch with everyone else at the same time, laugh at the same time, cry at the same time, enjoy the film together. Listen, I have so much to say, and yet it just depends on what we're going to focus on. I'm here and proud to be part of this discussion today, understanding the fact that we still have a lot of work to do, and that deaf people who want to work in the industry and what it is they need to do, or what it is they need to undertake, or how can they make a movie, or how can I direct, or how can I write, or what can I do, I say, look, you have to collaborate. You can't wait for people to come to you. You have to make the effort. You have to approach people. And that's it.
I know with both Zachary and Marley, you had sort of talked about some of the changes that you've seen in the industry since you first started. I'm curious as well too for you, both Alethea and Randall. With so much of the industry, not even just the industry, but even just sort of the history of film and media in general, it's so much centered on like the white male gaze. Has there been a difference from when you first started making work to now, and like what's been, has there been any sort of double-edged sword to that as well?
I'll jump in once again. I've been at this is my 20th year in the industry. I started in 2003. And the change is huge in the Indigenous film world, at least in Canada. I don't know about down here. I feel like Res Dogs is changing a lot of things down here in Rutherford Falls. But because public broadcasting is a big thing in Canada and publicly funded content creation, I think we were a little bit ahead of the curve there. So we've seen enormous changes, but let's be real, it's not enough. As Zachary put so eloquently, you need multiple representations. It's not, it's not that one representation has been done and never needs to be done again. We need to see all the multifaceted parts of our communities. And so, you know, we've gone from tokenism now to oppressed peoples being given the reins at times, usually at a smaller budget than normal, so that's a whole thing. But at least we're getting to tell our own stories now. So I've gone from, you know, when I first started making film, my first little documentary came out, I was inundated with white male script writers, producers, sending me these scripts, and they were all the same script. It was all the tropes of Indigenous women. Page 1 was usually an Indigenous woman being, you know, undergoing violence or being hypersexualized in some way. And then a white man would come along and really understand her. And then eventually, you know, either a spirit or a shaman or a magical animal that can communicate speaks to the white man and saves the day, saves her. And then there's often some commentary I really related with what you're saying about intergenerational bickering and that kind of thing, like where you have to choose between the past or the future, and it's such bullshit. Excuse me, am I allowed to swear on this? I feel like I've been swearing a lot.
You can swear, that's fine.
I got.
And I could teach you the sign for that word if you want.
Little unrelated tidbit. I don't know if you know this, but Inuit have our own form of sign language. There's an Inuit that's separate from American Sign Language. We have our own.
And again, you also have to understand sign language isn't international either. It goes from culture to culture.
Oh, that's
So yeah, there's a sign for every language out there. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, you know, it was really interesting what Marley said about just her. Yeah, I mean, Marley is such an amazing, incredible, inspirational person, and I'm not just saying that because you're a juror. And but what she said about you know, being, she can't represent everybody in a community, and I think the same goes for stories. You know, a single story can't represent everybody, and I think the answer to that is just a lot more stories. You know, and a lot more stories from different perspectives within a community, created by people from that community, and all the intersections of that person being told in story form, and you know, you get more stories out there. Then you get more perspectives, and you don't have that pressure of having to represent everybody. And I certainly feel that things have been changing. You know, but there's just, like you said, a long way to go to get the full range of. And that will never be, you know, we will never get there because we're all so different and we're all so individual. We have all of our unique experiences, but right now it's like, yeah, there's more stories being told, but you could feel the cap, you know. You could feel the cap.
Yeah, go ahead.
Octavia Butler says that God is change. Change is guaranteed. Change is the only guarantee. And to resist a modernizing world is futile. It's a fool's errand because the future wins. Time only moves in one direction, and to be indignant in the face of change is ridiculous. Change is truncated. It moves forward and back. It is not graceful. It is happening slowly in Hollywood. It used to be that trans folks were brought in to mitigate harm, to read something, to suggest ways to soften the, you know, offensive tropes of representing trans life. And it has changed. Now trans folks are at the helm. It's not uncommon to meet a gender expansive person who's an executive or in the writer's room, or producing. And yet, there's still a way that we're sort of, all of us, wedged in to things that are already happening, because the status quo would like to keep everybody employed, everybody who's been employed. And all of those folks are used to working at a level where they now have to accept less, right? They have to share resources. And everybody does have to give something up to live in a more equitable world, and to reject the narcissism of capitalism, the ego of Hollywood, of the singular genius. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is about the collective. It's about sharing, it's about community. And what a gift to be in community with all of you.
I want to add something, and you really hit the nail on the head there very clearly. Two things. This morning, in fact, I was looking on my Facebook page, and I happened to see a mother of a friend of mine, a young girl who's deaf. She has been she's a very skilled signer for songs. And she was involved in a Nickelodeon show called Kids Bop. Is that what it's called? Do you all know the show? Kids Bop? Okay, great. And Savannah is her name. And she was very excited. This is the first time that you've seen a deaf girl on that show. And I was so jazzed for her. And what I saw is that, well, she said, would you mind explaining the story about her? And I said, sure, what is it? Because the Kids Bop kids were going on a tour. They had a whole series of dates. And I was hoping that I would see her on this. She said, no, unfortunately, no. I said, what do you mean? And she said, the producers were using her exclusively for promoting the tour, whatever it is they do, they sign a song. However, that was all they were using her for, because they weren't going to let her on the tour because they said the interpreter was too expensive. What do you mean expensive? Too expensive to pay for the interpreter. Too expensive to give her access. That's fucking ridiculous. So I was so pissed off, and I'm certainly, and this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly, I'm hoping that the news wires pick it up and say that they're depriving this young girl her dream to do something that she loves, that she's so good at. And this is now an example of what happens all the time for deaf kids and other deaf actors too, people who want to enter the business and the industry. That is deprivation of access. And it's crucial for us as a community, and it's a problem still. I have gotten roles to play, well, in fact, I was offered to play a role of a judge on a television show just recently, a signing judge, deaf judge, a 4-episode arc. After reading the script, it wasn't written for a deaf actor, it was written for hearing, but I went and did my research, looked for about 3 or 4 weeks after finding that there was no real live deaf judge who signs in American Sign Language. So I thought, okay, fine. Maybe there's judges out there who have a progressive hearing loss, who are hard of hearing. So fine, I called the executive producer, we met, we talked, he saw me speak, he saw me sign, he saw me with the sign language interpreter. So I said, great. So how do you plan to envision the set where I'm working in a courtroom with an interpreter? And he goes, you need an interpreter in your courtroom? I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I mean, how am I supposed to, preside in the courtroom without an interpreter? And he said, well, let me get back to you. And a half hour later, he called my agent and said, no, the offer was taken off the table. So by this, having said this, there's still a lot of education to put out there. There's still a lot of talking to do. We need to have conversations about this. And, oh, by the way, that show was canceled. Karma. So we have a lot of work to do. And there are also deaf trans, too, if you want to know, too. I mean, and they have their own community and their own struggles as well, being accepted, being recognized by our deaf community as well, too.
I'm curious too, because one of the things, all of you have also brought that up, is the idea of negotiation. Part of it is sometimes some people might potentially call that, with some of it at least, maybe like tokenism, or some of it at least kind of selling culture as well too, misrepresenting it. I think some people might say that Hollywood or the industry is sort of like a table too stained to try to get a seat at, and should we try to push to make our own table? And I'm curious, but there's also a lot of complications with that, of who's paying for it. How do you get the money for that? And I'm curious, there is no final answer to that or anything, but I'm curious what your thoughts are, because it is something where there is no, as of right now, there is no perfect one way to do it. I mean, I think both ways are kind of ways to build power for our own communities, but also something that, I don't know, I think both have their own aspirations that I think help everybody out as well too, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, I think both, right? Because a big part of it for me is just literally work, you know, just making sure people get paid and make a living. And there's a lot of actors who are great and they need to make a living. But I think, again, it goes back to that narrative scarcity thing. You know, when it's just that, then it's misleading and it's, you know, and it's not, you know, it's not truly representative. But when we create, as you say, create our own table, then, you know, we're able to counter those narratives and also educate. Going back to educating, you know, us telling our own stories cues the, you know, the larger industry into, oh, that was, you know, that director is like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot, you know. Hopefully, maybe not, but yeah.
I don't blame anybody for fighting for a seat at the table in Hollywood or wherever. I was talking about this with my business partner Stacy yesterday about whether or not to bring some things up at this panel, because you know, sometimes people in your own community can be critical of you and your own work, and is it taking things far enough? You know, are you just dancing around things? Is it enough to just be visible, you know, to normalize our existence in the world? And in my opinion, all of it's valuable. And I will totally defend huge creators that have done incredible shows that have normalized the existence of racialized people in everyday spaces. And even if those shows aren't always speaking about the issue directly, normalizing our existence is incredibly important. That said, we also need the work that challenges people, that confronts them, that pushes those boundaries. It's all valuable, and we need to not be, you know, hitting that cap where we have to choose between one or the other. And that cap is real. I've been told, oh, we already have a Native show this year. One. Not even a show. We were talking about a one-off documentary. This is a tiny world. So that cap is real, it exists, and it needs to not exist. You need to judge work based on its content, on its originality, on its entertainment value and all of that, and not put in this magical cap that doesn't exist for anyone else.
That same thing, I mean, casting is a big part of it all too. When Coda was in the process of being cast, I was the first actor to be cast, and I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with Sean Heater, and found out that it was attached to a studio at the time, and I was on board. And then they said that the lead character, Frank, my husband, they were asking me or somebody who might be an A-lister box office draw that could play that role. I said, wait a minute, hold on. I mean, what do you mean box office draw? A hearing actor to play deaf as if it was a costume? And I put my foot down right at that moment and I said, look, and this is the first time I've ever done this in my 36-year career. I said, no. Otherwise, I'm out. I'm just out. I've never said that before. I never had but I knew in my gut that this was the right moment to say that. You cannot play deafness as a costume. We are not costumes to put on and take off at the end of the day. So fortunately, the script, eventually the film left the studio and became an independent film. But I can't even imagine anybody playing that character as deaf. And I mean, I once challenged somebody by saying, do people actually believe Al Pacino was deaf in Scent of a Woman? I mean, it's the same idea. I mean, that was back then. We're talking about today. We're moving forward, and we're being represented, and that's the most important thing you have to do. But yes, it can get sticky because some people are still very defensive. They say, well, what's acting all about? What's the job of an actor? But to play different roles. But at the same time, you're right. You can't, I mean, there are deaf actors out there. There are deaf writers out there. There are deaf directors. And I've now just become a director, so it's a matter of, well, what can I say? I talk too much.
I want to hear all the things that Althea wants to bring up on the panel that you haven't said yet.
Say, come on.
I mean, that reminds me of red face and blackface. Like, it's, where we have actors and we need a chance to develop our cast, our crew, our creators. And, Hollywood needs to make room, but when they're not, we need to be making our own independent work so that we're developing our teams and develop a deep bench for our casts and crew, and develop our own film language, because it doesn't all have to be in the colonial European way either. So
I'm curious too, also, one of the things with this discussion that we were hoping to talk about was, some of the industry's attempts, some that have been good, some of that have maybe been a little bit more performative in terms of diversifying, talent stories that are being told on screen. I think, this is just my own opinion, I think sometimes that can fall under more of something like quantification versus qualification. And I'm curious what you think it will take for us to get to the point of, just qualifying a story on its own versus, necessarily saying like what you were saying, well, we already have the one native show,
Tell us more about that.
I don't know.
Qualification versus quantification.
I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, the idea that like it's more based on a number that they can point to, where they're saying this year we supported 5 trans filmmakers, versus there's this really great story that happens to be by a trans filmmaker, something like that. And I do think that is something like that can be on the more performative side of it, does turn into something that's a bit more of a numbers game. And I'm curious, at what point do you think we'll get to something where it is just about, the richness and the uniqueness of the voice and what's being said on film?
I mean, I've been brought in as a diversity hire before. I think many people can identify with that experience, and once you get your foot in the door, you just kick it wide open and bring everybody in with you. Bring all of the, yes, we can celebrate that. I do think that folks from any marginalized communities have a mentality of sharing, and that we are pilloried oftentimes by folks in our own community, and it is hard. And that with great visibility, with great power comes great responsibility. I think creating work, no matter what, by any means necessary, thinking of the highest goal, the highest version, where you have optimal institutional support, and the scrappiest DIY version that you're gonna make come hell or high water, with or without anybody's support. And knowing that we will all tell stories differently, and that scarcity is what has kept us divided. To imagine that we live in a world where there is true equity, where there is room for all of us at the table, where it's a huge table, and we're sharing in each other's presence. I think that is the new era that we're upon.
I've had people ask me, deaf people, why don't why am I not in your movie? Why can't I be in your place as a lead? Why can't I get an agent like you have an agent? What is it that I can do? I mean, I do lots of motivational speaking. I speak in front of groups and go on the circuit, and they say, why? I said, well, you have to work for it. You have to, because I'm there doesn't mean that the circumstances are different. You aren't invited as freely as you would like to be, as much as I would like to be. It doesn't happen that way. Yes, we do have to develop our own stories. We do have to set up our own projects, create our own bits on paper. But yet, at the same time, we need people in the other groups to support us, to collaborate with us. It's almost like I'm in a situation where it's a catch-22 for me at least. But yet at the same time, when it comes to work, and it's something that's of interest to you, and you work, you study for it, and you go for it, and you hopefully can get it. I don't know. I'm really a bit tired of having to explain we need work, we need representation, we need to be acknowledged, we need to be respected. I'm tired of doing that. But yet, this is my passion, and I have to speak out about what I'm passionate about for my community. It is what it is. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I don't want to sound like I'm a bitch. I don't want to sound like any of that. But I'm speaking my truth from my own experience. And I hope to move forward from that.
Going off of Zachary's point, you know, I do believe we are entering a new age. What does that look like for each of you?
I'm thirsty.
Me too.
Do I always have to go first?
Whoever wants to jump in.
I think Taika Waititi has changed everything for Indigenous filmmakers around the world, showing that he can create brilliant, fascinating, hilarious content that's also marketable as like he kills at the box office. And so, and same thing with Black Panther and Woman King, like those films doing well at the box office show us like that argument of like we have to consider our budget and what, like that's just not an excuse anymore, and that's changed everything. It's like, as a little documentary filmmaker in the high Arctic of Canada, that's changed the way I can approach people. Sometimes all it takes is for one person to succeed and prove that it can be done. And I think the Taika effect is real and has affected the whole Indigenous film community for sure. Yeah, so what's next? I'm working on a comedy drama series with my business partner, Stacy. So I'm going from like terribly serious, sad documentary into the comedy world. I don't know what I'm doing. But I really feel like the doors are wide open, and I think it's still harder for people like us to sell shows, but it's not an automatic like, what? Why are you even trying to talk to me? It's not that anymore. We at least have an opportunity to pitch people now.
Yay. Is it an Indigenous? Do you know there's an Indigenous deaf girl in the new series Hawkeye for Marvel? Yeah, I want to see more of her. She's almost like, it's a little bit of tokenism, but at the same, I hope they write her some substantial dialogue and so forth.
She's actually getting her own show that's coming out too. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Anyone else?
What was the question again?
What is this?
The future.
Yeah.
Well, in this age of Aquarius, I don't know. For me, I always think of it just like inch by inch, day by day, and I don't know what the future entails. I know there have been times. I know when in the early 2000s, when Better Luck Tomorrow came out here at Sundance, it was this like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the industry, and it didn't do that, and it was an amazing film, and an amazing moment. So I always, I guess I'm a little, I don't trust the powers that be so much, but I do feel like just these people who I'm sitting up here with, I'm just everything that we're doing is making a difference, and over time, my hope is, we don't have to have a panel about representation again. because yeah, I've talked about it. It's kind of defined my working career in a lot of ways, and I think it's great, and it's an honor to be able to represent that. But there's so much more to what we do, and maybe I don't know, in 5 years it'll be different. 10 years, less, maybe, who knows.
Fewer remakes, I hope. Like the kind of updating a franchise endlessly, just like the 5th version of something, or the Y2K generation of a show. It feels like we're just recycling and rehashing this kind of nostalgic impulse, or to want to return to something and to share it with a new generation. But I hope that with the possibility of technology, of immersive realities, of storytelling that's expansive, of taking a queer approach to telling stories that exists outside of linear time, that exists outside of the rules and the conventions of filmmaking. I look forward to something that's completely unprecedented. And we see it all the time at places like Sundance.
Listen, I echo everything that you all just said here. I want to be able to see more in the future televisions and films of deaf actors who can carry a film or a story or television show like Coda did. We had 3 authentically deaf actors carrying the film. I want to see more of that. Tokenism is so overdone. It's been there, done that. People ask me, so, what's next for you? And in all honesty, I don't talk about it, only because I don't know what to say. Unless there's something that's locked that has a green light. I have a lot on my plate in development. Does that mean it's going to happen? I don't know. It's exciting to have something in development. It's exciting to have a script. It's exciting to envision the character that I hopefully will be able to play and to portray. But at the same time, you don't know if it's going to actually happen because of the powers that be. So I'm, at the same time, a mother of 4, and the fact that, I see how life can be different for 4 different individuals, and I hopefully can show them that mom is able to do whatever it is that she chooses to do as an actor, as a director, as a producer, as an author. But for me, I want kids to have the opportunity, my kids, to look up and see that deaf people can do whatever it is that they set their mind to, and they have a chance to do it. Look, Jack runs my production company, the guy who's speaking right now, and every day I'll call him up. Actually, not call, but you know what I'm talking about. We'll talk on the video, and I'll say, so, what's happening? Who are we talking to today? It's always the same answer. Yes, they're going to call us back, or yes, or hopefully, we're on hold, or yes, we'll talk next week. And it's sort of the same thing. So, are you asking me to reply?
I don't know. If
No?
you want 30 seconds.
A 30-second reply? No, it's okay. You've said it all. You're fine. You're good. But I want to thank, by the way, for everything in terms of providing access through our interpreters and the cart here. So thank you for providing that access here today.
I think we have some time to opening it up to questions. Yes, in the back.
Oh, but should I just speak out loud?
Yeah.
Oh, well, hi. So,
Hey.
my name is Josh. I'm a student from Syracuse University. And I I know that even sometimes from your point of view, I know the story that Molly was telling, it can be hard to advocate for yourself to get those roles. But what would you say for someone who's a bit greener in the industry for, standing up for themselves, even if they're someone who's in a minority group?
To be in front of the camera?
Yeah, no, I think the question was, how does someone who is younger and from a minority group advocate for themselves? That was the question?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And either in front or behind the camera. So sorry.
I'm from Syracuse, New York. Yeah.
Well, I think everyone's path is different. But the one thing that is consistent is that whatever it is that you're wanting to do, just do it now in any ways that you can, and consistently do it, and have fun doing it, And in the process, you just get better and better and more confident, and opportunities, whether they be, other collaborators who are attracted to what you're doing, other, just opportunities will just arise when you're living your passion,
Create as big of a network as you possibly can. You'll have so many helpers and guides along the way, and I think that wisdom is really gleaned from the interactions that we have with people. Talk to as many people here as you possibly can. Tenacity wins. Let the closed doors that you encounter inspire you to go farther and to prove people wrong. Use that energy of and believe in yourself without question.
Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut, and what I tell my kids is, the 3 who are in college right now, if it's not something you feel passionate about, don't be afraid to make a change. Yeah. And in this case, find someone or something to fall back on too as well. I mean, it's about listening to your passion, knowing if you feel that it's something. It's also about having a mentor too, someone that you can bounce ideas off of, who can be there for you, not to hold your hand necessarily, but just to give you that extra push that might be in the form of advice. And if you can find that person, that's great. Because in my case, I was fortunate to have the actor Henry Winkler to be my mentor. And the bottom line is just listen to your gut. Whatever it is you feel good about doing. And if you don't, then move on and find another path. And rejection is not personal necessarily. It's not at all. For the most part.
And side hustles. Lots of side hustles. And don't be embarrassed about your side hustles either.
I guess everything they said, and I would add, just expect to be treated with respect. I mean, we're all so hard done by up here, but things are changing. Don't go in expecting to, and like feel like you're gonna be groveling, because if you have got a great idea or a great project or you've got skills, believe in it, expect to be treated with respect, and if they don't, you move on and find people, find your peers, find people who you relate to, because it's crazy how often like people do like a little beginner workshop in something and end up staying friends and colleagues for life from those experiences. It's amazing how often those people become your your second set of eyes on when you need somebody to do a fresh read or someone to commiserate with when things aren't going the way you want it to. So keep in touch with people who you connected well with, whether it's in school or other things. And if you're not breaking through in the big leagues immediately, find your people and just work your way with them.
Have patience.
Another thing is, like, when you come up against people not letting you in, it's good to get angry, and anger is great fuel. but bitterness is not good fuel, you know. So just make sure you don't go there.
Any other questions? Yes, in the white hat.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm in high school right now, and I was just wondering what advice you had for young minorities to just like keep staying motivated when there's just such discrimination in like everyday life. Because I've heard a million times like, oh, just don't let it get to you, but that's kind of just hard.
The question was how to stay motivated in the face of discrimination.
Finish school first, okay? Make sure, Kat, you finish school. And that's what life is. That's part of what the growing process is all about. You will be out of the house without the support that you have from your family. You're going to have to learn to grow quite quickly. You have to make decisions for yourself, and common sense will guide you whichever way you choose to let it guide you. It's a whole new world out there. So people who say no to you, don't let them say otherwise. Just move beyond that. It's easy to say, but I understand it's hard to put that into practice. It's just a part of what you go through in the growing process. Can you help me out here up on the platform?
I had nightmares about high school for at least a decade after finishing. So these are the tough years. And then find your people. You will find your people. They are not necessarily from your family of origin. They are not necessarily from the town that you're from. Your world will expand more and more, and life will present you with things you never expected. And it will be a wonderful process of discovery.
Also, just keep wearing that hat. I mean, that hat is incredible. You'll go anywhere you want with that hat.
I guess I would add, it's kind of unrealistic to say don't let it get to you. It gets to you. Yeah. You can't deny that. You need to not let it affect how you think of yourself. But it's okay to have a hard day when something doesn't go well. But your generation starting out now, you've got so much more access to the tools to make your own work without having to have massive budgets that didn't exist when I was starting out 20 years ago. So just like Randall was saying a little while ago, keep working, keep making stuff, do it consistently, and eventually you do good work. And you know, I've really struggled at times facing racism and the racism of low expectations because I'm a Native woman. And I look at my film elders in my community, like Zacharias Gunuk, who made The Fast Runner, which was a global success. And then Alanis Obamsawin, another Native filmmaker who's, I think, working on her 53rd documentary or something like that. And they were making excellent work at a time that was way harder than when I started. And so I looked to them and what they did. They just kept making excellent work. And at some point, that's just undeniable.
Other questions?
There's a burning question over here.
Okay, go for it.
Black mask. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm Steph. I just want to say thank you as a queer Indigenous person and emerging producer. Just thank you for the work that you've done. But my question is, you talked about the cap, right? What are some ways that we can punch up now? And is there an example of how you've done that?
The question was about the cap and how do we punch through it.
I have an anecdote to share there, and it's not my cleverness, but I heard someone else ask, well, how many white projects do you have? It's like, do they have a cap, you know? It's pretty ballsy, but I thought that was a great way to confront that question.
I did just tenacity and staying inspired, and you know, that's really it.
I think be willing to sustain an uncomfortable moment. You know, be willing to challenge people's ways of thinking when you have the opportunity to to give them the benefit of the doubt. Shame is never a doorway to an education, but to communicate with empathy to people who don't understand. And it happens on a one-to-one individual basis, you know? And we change everyone we touch.
Life is strange. We're living in strange times. The fact that people are so divisive, their journeys are so different. My philosophy has always been, as a person, is to approach life with an open mind and to listen what people are saying to me that will make me help me make a decision where I can, whoever it is I work with or whoever it is I deal with. I need to have an open mind with whoever I'm speaking with. And I don't tolerate bullying. I don't tolerate anyone who wishes to diminish me, because I guess you have to say I have a very thick skin. And it's basically how I approach things. Simple as that.
Yeah, another question? Black Beanie.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm also a high school student. Me and Kat are together. So I just wanted to ask for Randall and Marley, you both talked about kind of recently stepping into director roles. So I just wanted to ask you about that transition and kind of how that was for you.
Question was about transitioning into a director role.
Well, for me, it just felt like kind of a natural progression. But when I first started acting, I had a very tough time. It was very much a struggle, and it goes back to what I was saying about like just kind of when opportunities aren't coming, just do it. And because the technology had advanced so much, you know, I started making shorts and making web stuff and shooting it with my friends. And to me, it was just an opportunity to keep acting. But in the process, I learned how to direct, you know. And I would say, from having directed this feature film, so much of my knowledge base, I mean, it did come from my experiences on set as an actor, but so much of it came from that period where I just wasn't working as an actor, so I had to kind of just create stuff just to work, just to be on camera and practice and try to get better. And the skills I picked up from editing and sound design, everything from that period were, you know, I didn't know it at the time, but would be such a big part of this journey as a director.
Sure, that's great. I love that. I flirted with the idea of being a director. Perhaps I thought myself, maybe one day. I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be a director, but it was something that, I mean, there were numerous opportunities on set where I was working with a director I found very interesting, because I'm very instinctual and I'm very sensitive to the fact I observe a great deal, maybe sometimes a little too much, but that's okay, because I use my eyes to hear everything because I don't have the opportunity to hear them through my ears. So someone said to me, "You really are looking at things with an eye. You really focus in on one specific thing and take it in." And I said, "Yeah, that's the way I am." But in any case, having to do with directing, someone offered me to direct a new show for the Fox network called Accused, an anthology series. And when I was offered the idea to direct, at first I hesitated. I thought, me? I mean, well, fine. So I first thought it was important to look at the script. And the script entailed deaf and hearing characters working together, about a deaf woman who is a surrogate for a hearing couple. And I won't tell you the whole story. You have to watch it on Monday, but January 24th. Anyway, but my experience on set was so eye-opening because I have approached things as an actor. I've watched how actors work. Now I'm working from the other side. And I had the most fun watching actors at work, watching them develop their thought processes, whatever it is they wanted to put out there on the screen. And it was so exciting for me. And the fact that I was able to communicate with my deaf actors directly, and I'm talking about on their behalf, but they said to me they had never been directed before by someone because they didn't have the benefit of deaf directors, people who could communicate with them. They never had that experience with other hearing directors, so that made me feel good. I understood where they were coming from. No offense to hearing directors, however, it's just different. So that being said, I love and am planning to direct more. And it's a really exciting process. It's just a different journey for me now that, I mean, I'm really glad to have experienced that first directing experience. And I'm never going to look at the set the same way again. I mean, I tip my hat to every single member of the crew, every single person that makes a film happen or a television show happen.
Another question? Yes. Black mask, white sweater. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Pepe. I'm also from Syracuse University. So, as a young student filmmaker who want to speak up for the minority groups, sometimes I would feel that, like, question myself that should I keep on what I'm doing? So, my question is that, do you ever feel that way, and how do you solve that problem and find the motivation again?
Sorry, could you repeat just the last part of the question?
So,
Yeah.
like, did you ever feel the feeling that you question yourself? Should I keep on what I'm doing? And how do you find that motivation again?
When you find yourself questioning what you're doing, how do you find the motivation to keep going forward?
Well, she also asked, do you ever question whether you should be doing this?
Yeah, questioning.
Every day.
Never.
As an artist, it's like you constantly question yourself. You have to, otherwise your work doesn't improve. It's particularly in documentary film, I feel like you shouldn't do it unless you can't not do it, because it will kill you. You want to give up 1,000 times on any project, really, when you're the driving force behind the project. It's such a mountain to climb with every single project, no matter how experienced you are. There are 1,000 moments that you question, like, is this worth it? Should I be doing this? Is this the right project? And you have to constantly question that so that you're making it right, because there's a responsibility in storytelling that you need to be telling a good story and contributing to the world. And yeah, and if you don't go to sleep at night thinking, do I really want to do this? And like, I wish I didn't want to make documentary films. Life would be so much easier, but I can't not. It's like an addiction. It's yeah. So you'll discover soon whether you actually really want to do this, because you'll either stick with it or you won't. And it's not like a lot of other jobs where you're like, oh, I'm thinking about changing careers. It's like a need to make work.
The best part of being an actor, that's the best part, is to play all the different characters that you can play. You know, I thought at one time, what would it be like to be a teacher? What would it be like to be a nurse? And I found them fascinating, the characters, the careers, the law enforcement, whatever it may be. But, I mean, I don't think in real life I could do it. But as an actor, I can certainly play like that. But yeah, yes, you're right. It's about, you can't get bored. I mean, I just move on. I mean, that's why I said, listen to your instincts, your gut.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Yes, in the back.
Hi, my name is Becca Han. Thank you so much for all your time today and everything you've shared. I am as they say, emerging writer-director, aspiring, and I am a bisexual Korean American pastor's kid. First time I've said that out loud in public. But often I find myself just really, my whole life I have wanted to see people like me on screen just to navigate my life.
Well, I think your story is the battle. You know, I don't think you should think about anything else, because just hearing your story, the little you told us just now, I mean, for me, I'm like, that's fascinating. And that's something, there's something there that I can identify with, that I think we all can identify with in that experience, unique experience that you have. So I wouldn't think so much about what the community needs, or, you know, I would focus on who you are and what you have to tell, because no one else could tell that, you know.
And tell one story at a time. You know, one story will lead you to the next one, will lead you to the next.
That's really good advice. That's excellent advice. You don't have to cram everything into one project. Focus on one aspect, but good luck to you. There can never be enough BIPOC queer stories, so go for it.
Yeah, one last question. Hit the red beanie, yellow mask back.
Hi guys, thank you so much for being here. My name is Sarah Montalto. I'm the programming director for a very small regional-based film festival in North Carolina. But I'm curious what you think of the current festival landscape in the United States in representing more diverse films, and what impact you hope independent film will have having more representation outside of traditional Hollywood.
So the question was, what are your thoughts on the current landscape when it comes to representation in film festivals, and what are your hopes for the future of representation within that as well?
So grateful. I'm not like a watchdog by any means. I couldn't tell you what the numbers, you know, to your quantification comment are, but so thankful for film festivals. I mean, as a last kind of space where independent storytelling has a venue, it would be very scary if we were just in a space where it was only studio work and only the distributors that were creating content. I mean, this is a pathway for storytelling that exists outside of the structure, the institution of Hollywood. And I feel like we have an ethical mandate to support film festivals and to make sure that film festivals continue to thrive. It's crucial to a democratic storytelling process.
Coda had that path because of a film festival. It was a movie with multiple deaf characters and directed. I mean, now we have a film this year, Tuba Thieves, here at Sundance, if you have a chance to see it, that's directed by a deaf person. So because of film festivals, we're having that opportunity, we're getting there. And I have to thank, in particular, Sundance for giving us that pathway, paving the way for us to tell our stories, for all of us.
Randall, Lethea, any last words?
See, I come from Canada and the festival circuit there. I haven't done as many in the States as I have in Canada. And festivals are incredible. I can't believe how many there are, how niche they can be, and they find their audience. There's such an important ecosystem for filmmakers that don't just automatically slot into big well-funded machines. So they're the people who volunteer at festivals, bless them, my goodness. There are a lot of us that wouldn't have careers without festivals.
Yeah, I mean, this is my first time at Sundance, and I don't know what the other major film festivals are like, but I've been to a lot of specifically Asian Pacific American film festivals, and they're a big part of my life and my acting career. I've gotten to play so many different things because of those festivals, and gotten to see them with an audience because of those festivals. So yeah, I understand the importance, of film festivals, and yeah, it's just it's a good thing to support.
I want to leave you with a feeling, something I might be conflicted with, not necessarily feeling welcome or not feeling, if you're feeling at the point where you have faith in the system, if it's something about employment or where you're able to do the work that you want to be able to do or pursue the dream that you have. People will say, keep the faith. But I think the most important thing we should do is to spread the faith, all right? Spread the words, and things will come your way.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you so much, Marley, Zachary, Randall, and Alethea. Thank you all for coming as well, too.